This is a very important disclaimer. This video is not intended to suggest anyone to do anything ever in any sort of way. It is just talking about Aldous Huxley's experience with psychedelics. Hello, my name is Nico, and I'm here to review Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell. These are two essays by this very acclaimed British author that lived a long part of his life in the US. His most known works are Brave New World, Demons of Ludum, and although The Doors of Perception might not be the most known work by him, it's still one that had a lot of impact in people during the 60s. Aldous Huxley was born to a family of very well-cultured people from Surrey, England. Everyone in his family seemingly already wrote, so it was not hard to preview that he would eventually become a writer as well. He did abandon the scientific field to write literary works, but the overall aspects of his writing is still seeing things through a scientific perspective, even though he likes visiting different perspectives. And he was born in 1894. He had issues with his sight throughout his entire life, almost as a way of foreshadowing, of foreseeing things that were. He was already proving that there could be a drug, there could be some sort of tool that human beings could use to bear with the pain. And that's something he works in Brave New World, his most known work. So he knew about many things simultaneously. He took interest in many different stuff. But later on his life, he got interested in the studies of psychedelics. The Doors of Perception takes its name from a poem by William Blake. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everyone would see everything as it really is, infinite. This is just something that Blake could feel by his genius, but something that Huxley could notice better after he had his first experience with a Heaven and Hell also comes from Blake on the marriage of heaven and hell. But it's also kind of brings me back to John Milton's Paradise Lost, to the mind it's its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven, in which we control the things that are in our mind and we find an equilibrium of everything so as we can be conscious and at the same time try to wade in the different perspectives into it. The Doors of Perception. I might be a very huge fan of The Doors. Maybe I like Jim Morrison's lyrics, or maybe I like the music and stuff. But it is true that I got in contact with literature a lot more when I was younger, thanks to the music I listened to. Like if you check Black Sabbath, Dio put on a song in which they were talking about heaven and hell, and then the Doors took their name from The Doors of Perception as well. This is a book that I carried to many antipodes of the mind and many different physical places as well. I wouldn't say it's my Bible, but I think it's very interesting to check upon the things that Huxley says about acquiring conscience, defining who you are, what is the world around you, the infinite, and the expenses of being, the times we have to work, the times we have to waste, which is something that Georges Bataille, a French author, talks about as well. And we can see in many other spheres of literature and philosophy that talks about the human condition. In The Doors of Perception, Aldous Huxley experiments with mescaline that comes from peyote and was a psychedelic substance used by the Native Americans from the US, and it was extracted from the cactus. He was very curious as to what could be the effects of this. Take it that back at the time that Huxley was using this, there was not such a huge stigma on this as it has nowadays, and as it had like a while after he did this, because it was still being tested. It was still being like a resource for mental health issues. He wanted to test it out, and he was a scholar. He wrote so many amazing books that were recognized all around the world. And then this very intelligent man with a very respectable background decided to use mescaline. And he has this group of scientists around him to put it down. What was his reaction to it? What was the way he was seeing things? And this is just how he describes the way he saw things. Being able to see colors in a very bright manner, patterns, reflect upon yourself in a way that generally you cannot do because you are living in the sphere of the supposedly real world with all of your responsibilities. Besides the mescaline, he also talks about the lysergic acid created by Albert Hoffman. So there is also a book that Albert Hoffman himself wrote called My Problem Child. It's also a very good read. It is extracted from ergot, and the fungi are affecting rye. This causes a psychedelic effect. So what happens is Aldous Huxley is there with these people watching him. He starts noticing the regular objects of common, ordinary daily life, seeing the beauty of it, and things that geniuses usually pay attention to, because any other artists like Velázquez, Goya, Van Gogh, Monet, he mentioned so many amazing artists because at a certain point during his trips, he starts seeing books of paintings and stuff, and he starts realizing what is it that the painters were trying to convey. And then among this, he talks a little bit about the infinite possibilities of things and the perceptions we might have and stuff. Geniuses and artists are already born with this, because if Caravaggio is able to paint the chiaroscuro with light and darkness, that's a sort of perception that is not really the way sometimes you are seeing things realistically, but it's still a different way of visiting a perception of what's real, because the way we are viewing things in general is just our perspective of how much attention you are putting to certain objects. To defend this position, Huxley mentions the folds of his clothes and the way that painters are able to make this something very enticing, something very beautiful to look at. In our daily lives, we might just pass by it and ignore it. While the rest of us see only under the influence of mescaline, the artist is congenitally equipped to see all the time. For the artist, as for the mescaline taker, draperies are hung hieroglyphs that stand in some peculiarly expressive way for the unfathomable mystery of pure being. He reflects upon the miracle of existence and just being here right now in this moment. For instance, me here in this moment with this phone that I don't know whoever's going to watch this one day, with my little candles, with this space that I prepared in here, because it's also my perspective on the world, with the special attention that I gave on putting Jim Morrison's lyrics and my vinyl by The Doors, my 60s makeup, which is something that many people might not take notice of. It's all my perspective on the world. When I put the things aside in here, putting candles in here, trying to create a chiaroscuro, it's because I'm already someone who admires the art of Caravaggio, of Goya, of many other painters that use this sort of tactics to transpose their feeling into the world. And since I assimilate myself to those things, I'm able to create something new. There are infinite ways we can see the same thing. Huxley says, while you're under the influence, things that are already there in your mind can be explored further. You will be able to see things about yourself that you're not usually able to. It starts just by looking at a flower. In the beginning, he starts taking notice of flowers. A flower can be just a simple object, as a human being speaking a language already assimilates a word for this flower. And then I call it flower. But that's only if I'm already a native speaker of English, because if I'm a native speaker of another language, the first thing I might think is like floor. And all of the other paths that I make into getting the meaning of this are already different from yours if your native language isn't. Because all of the paths that I make to associate this sign to a symbol are different to yours. So in here, we catch up another thing that Huxley talks about, that is the feeling of things. Because there are many things that we have to limitate to the spoken language, to the way we talk about things and the shared symbols between the community. But there's also the things that we are able to feel, despite the phenomenon of language. And in the end, something that is supposed to be only the experience he had with a psychedelic, it's something a lot deeper. It's something about people being able to discover themselves and still being able to be productive human beings in society. Besides making it easier for you to exist, just knowing the simple fact of being here, holding this flower, looking around, and acknowledging whatever I am and whatever everything around me is, I can see beauty in it. When I am able to see the depth of stuff, when I'm able to see all of the geometric patterns that are already there, but I, with my ordinary eyes of daily life, let pass by. So instead of torturing myself with my conscience, I can choose to also get some enjoyments out of it. And that's where the doors of perception lie, because there are so many perspectives you might have on stuff, I might have on stuff, and all of these doors can be opened sometimes if you have either a blockage from it because of the place you were born, your prejudices, your way of living, your age, the sky. So look at things around you and just live with them, stay there with them. Not to care much about time. Things like time, they become unimportant. The space in general, the physical space. This is what Huxley says about the sign and the significance, which is something linguists talk about a lot when we assimilate a symbol, a written symbol or a spoken symbol to a meaning. Today, the percept had swallowed up the concept. I was so completely absorbed in looking, so thunderstruck by what I actually saw, that I could not be aware of anything else. Garden furniture, laughs, sunlight, shadow. These were no more than names and notions, mere verbalizations for utilitarian or scientific purposes after the event. He concludes the doors of perception as being a way of seeing the infinite amount of possibilities you might have, and that some psychedelics might help you to achieve that. In Heaven and Hell, he talks more about the antipodes of the minds, the places you can go when you are under the influence of something. And you don't really need to be under the influence of some psychedelic. Sometimes meditation might take you there. Sometimes starving yourself, hypnosis will get you into that point in which you're just way beyond your physical being. And if you have good stimulus to think about to become a better person, he might have been a great contributor to the beatniks and also to the hippies. Huxley talked a lot about was using this as a way to reform yourself and to create paths for yourself to be a better human being and still be a useful member of society. And not just abandon everything and try to go against all of it. We should fight for the things we can control rather than fight a storm with our bare hands. We are usually so lost in our everyday lives that we forget of ourselves and we forget to watch the life go by around us. And he's got a quote in here that talks about it. We live together. We act on and react to one another. but always and in all circumstances we are by ourselves. The martyrs go hand in hand into the arena. They are crucified alone. Embraced, the lovers desperately try to fuse their insulated ecstasies into a single self-transcendence. In vain. By its very nature, every embodied spirit is doomed to suffer and enjoy solitude. Sensations, feelings, insights, fancies, all these are private and except through symbols and at second hand, incommunicable. We can pull information about experiences whenever the experiences themselves. From family to nation, every human group is a society of island universes. And this is what he relates to when he talked about the antipodes of the mind. The island universes of possibilities. It's also a little bit harsher to talk about this topic nowadays in a time in which people will use something. Back in the 80s, 70s, people will do this stuff, and nowadays it has fentanyl in it. So it's a bit scary. Reading this book really helps you open some doors that you are sometimes reluctant to open. I hope you get to read this. It's a very good book to get to learn about things that have some stigma on, especially nowadays. And I hope you'll be here for my next review, which is a book that I got from my friend Larissa. She lent it to me. It's Chekhov, and I'll be reading Infirmary number 6. Have a great one. Thank you for watching this, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.